Hello everyone, welcome to Scorcher Toys at Anymoon.com's review of the Aoshima New Century Alloy Legioss toys. At first blush, you might think these are just Toynami Masterpiece Alpha reissues, but there's a lot more going on here and we're going to explore it all. Aoshima dropped all three variants in October 2007 for 9,800 yen. That's more than a decade ago, so they're long sold out everywhere, but spoiler alert, they're not very good. So, spend that money instead on newer toys from Big Bad Toy Store. Click through my campaign link below to shop for Mospeada, Robotech, or any other toy your heart desires and help this channel out in the process. Unlike the Toynami NPCs, which come in pretty amazing boxes, the Aoshima toys come in flimsy cardboard boxes that show off the toy with different space backdrops. If you own a Toynami NPC Alpha, then the contents will be familiar. Pulling the plastic clamshell out of the box, you'll find the same pilot figure, gun with removable magazine, tiny replica collapsed ride armor, and shoulder-mounted sensor array. For this release, you also get under-intake mounted missiles. Behind the tray, you'll find a baggie including stickers and instructions, generic for any of the three releases. I do have a full scan of the instructions up on Anymoon.com.
There are two things that are really going to jump out at you when you pull these toys out of their trays, and the first one is going to be your quality control issues. So this toy here has some weird paint issue going on. That arm won't collapse all the way. That's a pretty common issue. On this green toy, we have a warped wing, so that's unfortunate and also unfortunately pretty common. On all of these toys, the hinges for the wings don't recess like they do on the Toynami toys. They've done something inside the chest that's freezing up that hinge. So you'll get this gap right here, which is a little unfortunate, but just like the Toynami toys, if you leave them out like this, you can angle the wings down a little bit, which might look a little more like the anime if that's what you're familiar with. On any of these toys, there's a couple parts in the neck that are frequently installed backwards, so you might not actually be able to get the head to sit properly in any mode if that's the case, and it's all kind of glued together, so there's no real repairing that. The second thing that's going to jump out at you is this missile bay. Now both of these toys owe their lineage to the old EMI model kit from the 80s, where it had this optional missile bay, and to their credit, CMs with their missile bay did make it so you can just pop it off. So that's pretty cool. Now Toynami and Aoshima did not do that, or Aoshima did not do that, probably because Toynami insisted so it would differentiate them from their masterpiece releases, which is a bit of a bummer. I don't know anyone that wants that permanently affixed on there. Now the other thing from the model kit that carries over are these accessory missiles that just plug in underneath the intakes, like so. And Aoshima did a good job not making them overly long so they wouldn't interfere with diver mode, like they do on the Evolution toy. The landing gear on these toys continue to be problematic, particularly in the bagging. See, it kind of got a little bit of a loose one. They should lock in the forward position, and on the Aoshima toys, when everything is in their proper position, you should get some clearance from the ground at the chest. Now on my Toynami toys, I generally have that chest right up against the ground. Maybe I get a little tiny bit of clearance, but usually not so much. So Aoshima seems to do a better job in that regard. Another place where Aoshima does a good job is the back of the missile pod. You can attach the gun with the regular magazine to the back of the missile pod, which is pretty cool. On Evolution Toy and CM's Legiosses, you actually need to swap that magazine out with a specialty magazine just for going into that missile pod, which is pretty lame. One durability issue or build issue I have, my fin on my Zeta is very loose, so when I pick it up it tends to sit back on that fin, which is not ideal. All right, so going back to the guns, you also have the ability to use the hard points on the wings just like you do on the Toynami Masterpiece toy. If you are a perfect transformation stickler like I am, maybe you want to put that magazine pointing outward. The other option is to go ahead and remove the magazine and get a more line art accurate look by just tucking it in like so, so you'd have that gun facing inward. And obviously you can have three guns. I've lost a tire off my wheel. You have three guns on one Legioss toy, so you could really deck this thing out to look pretty aggressive. Here is an Aoshima pilot figure. Here's a Toonami pilot figure. They look identical to me. Inside the cockpits, things are exactly the same, except the paint is a little bit brighter on the Aoshima. The best way to open these canopies, by the way, hold the toy by the nose, and that creates a little pressure downward, and then it pops up the canopy pretty easily. So that's how you do that. There is a peg on the butt of the pilot figure. They just slide right in, just like the Toonami figure, obviously. And they fit in there incredibly tight, and there's a peg on the butt. So once they're in their position, they're not gonna go anywhere. So there you go. Now, a difference, obviously there's quite a bright paint change here, but another difference that I don't really like about the Aoshima toys is they removed the paint from the top of this piece here, and I'm sure that's a durability thing, like they were seeing it get scratched up on the Toonami Masterpiece toys, but it's just such a weird, jarring, incongruent white color bleeding through. So I found that to be a bit of a bummer. And again, we've got the Toonami over here, the Aoshima over here. You can see now the recessed wing hinge on the Toonami and kind of how it nicely flows back to the wing, and instead on this toy you get that kind of gap right there, which isn't ideal, pretty obviously. The other thing that you will see if you flip the toy over are screws. There are screws kind of throughout here, and if I flip over the Toonami toy, Toonami has screw covers, and you can see I've had to do some surgery on this toy, so there's one screw cover that I had to remove and it was a pain in the butt. Aoshima didn't put those screw covers on, so if you did have something go wrong, it looks like the Aoshima toy is going to be a lot more friendly to repair. If you don't have anything go wrong, then maybe you like the look of the screw covers rather than the more jarring look of the screws. All right, let's go ahead and transform to diver mode and see how the Aoshima toys perform there. Here we are in diver mode, and like the Toonami Masterpiece, you're gonna have to grab this sensor array out of your parts bin. There's no way to make it integral. A lot of people on their Toonami toys tried, and the result was they broke this little panel off the back. And because on the Toonami toys, you can't get this more than flat, if you were to try to lift up, you'd create a stress mark. If that didn't deter you enough, if you lift it up any higher, you would just break this piece off entirely. That's particularly problematic if the piece is in a lower position and you're just trying to fight it up because it's a little stuck. You could go like that and boom, on the Toonami toy, broken. On the Aoshima toy, no. You can actually lift this up, no penalty, which is great. You'll also notice there's a slot in the top, and that fits the destabilizer gun and is another visual cue that you're dealing with an Aoshima toy. Now I do have some scratched paint here, and that's because on this toy, out of all of mine, if I put it in the lower position, which you do for soldier mode, that's where the canopy nestles in, I could not get it up to save my life. I had to put things in and try to pry things up, and in the result, I scraped off some paint. So it is a very tight fit on one of my toys. On the other ones, it works just fine and is a nice little improvement. The biggest improvement by far in my book of the Aoshima over the Toonami Masterpiece has gotta be the hands. Because the hands on the Toonami Masterpiece toy seem like they are destined to fail no matter what you do. It kind of feels like they're made out of the shavings of erasers. So that stuff just crumbles apart on you right where these pins go through the fingers. It's just almost a given that it's going to crack there, especially as these toys get older. Whatever that material is seems to be going eroding even faster, and so these hands just do not work well on a Toonami Masterpiece toy. But on the Aoshima toy, they seem to actually be made of plastic, and they can handle being opened and closed and even gripping the gun. So big, huge plus for Aoshima when it comes to the hands and the durability of those hands on these toys. Like the Toonami toys, you do get functional integrated missile bays on these toys. And just like the Toonami toys, they're not exactly the best in implementation. So there's the missile bay inside the top shoulder. That's the one they have the best access to and would probably use the most. And it's got the proper count from the line art, so that's all good. The forearms, less well integrated. You can see the missiles not fully revealed when you open the door. So that's a little clunky. And you do get things like on this side where the glue vapors have changed the color of the plastic and you kind of have a warped door there. So not the best. If I move down here, you'll see I've got one here that if I open it, it just pulls everything apart on me. So, I mean, it's just a glue issue, but not super fun. Up here, you get the accurate how the door should work on the leg, which is great. And then same thing on the interior side. There's only one missile bay, as there should be, up on the top, unlike CM's who did multiple bays down there. So there you go. You have all these missile bays. They're integrated, which is cool. They don't really work very well, which is obviously much less cool. But I would say Aoshima did an equal job to Toynami on here. All the problems I have with my Aoshima simply are repeated from problems I had with Toynami toys. Finally, we make it to soldier mode, and I wanted to start by pointing out that I have all of these toys with their arms out holding the guns, which is generally something a Toynami Masterpiece toy either couldn't do from the beginning or couldn't do for very long. So at least in the onset, the Aoshima toys are able to hold those arms up, but I'm sure over time, like the Toynamis, that joint gets a little looser. So whether or not that's a lasting improvement, one has to wonder. Now, we have some issues going on here that I think are easiest to show on the green version of my toy. And the first of that is this wacky paint issue inside the visor. Now this is only going to be on the green toy, but you can see right up against the red, there's no green paint there, so that's a little funky. Then we have the hinge underneath, which is installed the opposite direction of how it's installed on a Toynami Masterpiece toy, this part right here. And sometimes that piece underneath it is also installed backwards. But for whatever reason, on this toy, that neck just will not sit inside the cavity underneath. And so I end up with very funky head problems there. Another issue that's very bizarre, and this one's across all of the Aoshima toys, this hinge doesn't come far enough forward, and this might relate to the inability to tuck the wings all the way in fighter mode. But that peg is supposed to go into that slot, but as we bring it down, it doesn't line up. And so you'll never get that shoulder to be completely flat against the body like it's supposed to be. It's always going to be poking out by that peg amount. Now we do get one big improvement that I really can't show you because there's no good way at it. But the chest, which ratchets, has a slightly different construction. And I don't know what the real benefit of it was beyond the fact I have not had a single Aoshima toy chest break on me. So there's a rod between these two intakes that holds everything together. That rod has not broken on any of my Aoshima toys, and it's starting to break pretty universally on my Toynami Masterpiece toys. So that maybe was done by Aoshima as having seen that some of those Toynami Masterpiece toys were breaking, so they improved the chest connection. Not entirely sure. Another build quality issue we could see on my green version. This wrist here, very sloppy and loose, spins around all the time. Fortunately, it's a left wrist. It's not going to cause me a whole bunch of headache. But there you go. So you have chest improvement, chest hinge is better developed, but then you have multiple build issues throughout. On the left, I have the Toynami Masterpiece. On the right is the Aoshima New Century Alloy. And I wanted to show you the new hips, or thighs, and hips and thighs, really. This piece here on the Aoshima, it's two plastic pieces with one plastic cap on top that eliminates the seam right down the middle. On the Toynami toy, these parts are metal, or they're plastic on the Aoshima, but it's just a part on either side that pinch together, and then you have that seam right down the middle. So that is a plus for the Aoshima. Now on my Toynami Rook toy, I get the best ability to angle the legs outward. Generally on a Toynami Masterpiece toy, you would be really lucky to get this sort of angle out where it probably means that something is breaking inside the thigh actually.
Normally you couldn't angle out more than just a little bit. And on the Aoshima toy, you absolutely cannot in any capacity angle the legs outward. And that is because Aoshima has completely redesigned this area here. And you can see it's got a different shape to it and everything. And what they've done in doing that is added ratchets. So that is a ratcheted joint. And if I take my Toynami, no ratchet. And since the foot, the heel, there's a lot of metal in there, that foot swings right back down, which generally, given how little articulation these toys have in the leg department, as far as knees and feet and ability to sweep the legs outward, it wasn't a huge deal on the Toynami toy that the weight caused it to drip down or droop down, but it's still a positive for the Aoshima that they have the ratchets and they keep the leg up. And it was even more forward looking for Aoshima because they knew they were working on the tread toy. And let me show you how that impacts that. So imagine this is your setup. You got your Toynami on the left, your Aoshima on the right, and you want to make it look like Rook is firing back to get away from some oncoming invid. You might bring a leg up and it's going to droop down on you. Or you might want to look like she's charging into battle, bring the legs back a little bit, and they're going to fall down on you. So that is where the benefit of the Aoshima ratchets come in. You can go ahead and bring a leg up and it'll actually stay in position so she can look like she's firing backwards. And you could of course bring the leg back and same deal. It'll stay back so you can have a lot more fun when you're using the tread or beta to get your soldier mode toy to look like it's flying in some direction, where when it's just standing on its own, it doesn't really matter that the feet are so heavy and the hips can't take it on the Toynami toy. But when you get it off the ground and you want to do some posing with the tread, that's when you really get some bang from the buck out of those ratchets. On every Aoshima toy I have owned, this piece on the chest has been installed upside down. So go ahead and slide that open. I have placed the little cyclone, that accessory, inside the chest. It can stay in there through all modes, so that's a little plus that we saw from the Toynami Masterpiece line. If you want another example of how build quality on these toys is pretty suspect, spin it around and you'll see these winglets on the back. They're always askew, they're never flush, and on the Toynami Masterpiece they actually are. So Toynami had better build quality in that respect, and it's kind of sad to see things go backwards. Articulation is exactly the same toy, again with exception of those hips that can't really flare out like they can on the Toynami, just a teeny tiny bit, not much. So we're not talking about a big loss there. The arms swivel around, the head back and forth, not really a ball joint, but it does allow just a tiny bit of up and down and left and right. Suck on that, CMs, huh? Okay, you also have a waist joint. And you've seen that these chests can go up and down. I don't know if that's going to help you. It's part of transformation, but maybe you can use it as to your benefit while posing the toy. This guy we can move out of the way. We have the ability to pivot out at the arm as well as lifting the arm up like so. And then we have an elbow, which is about 90 degrees, and a twist point above the elbow. Now, if that twist point isn't working for you, you don't have your extension out all the way. And that's pretty easy to have happen because those extensions are very sticky, finicky. Build quality inside is very poor, so sometimes they'll freeze up on you. Now, you do have the ability to pivot out at the legs and pivot in at the legs, but that's as good as you're going to get other than the back and forth action we've already seen. The foot, you might be able to angle your heel a little bit, but that's as much as you're going to get. And since you can't rock the hips out, doesn't really matter. Nothing going on with the toe as far as in and out, but you do have some up and down action, and the toe itself individually can rock. So you can have some fun with these toys. You can have more certainly than the old 80s version of the Alpha or Legioss, but it's certainly not on par with the offerings that we've seen more recently from more modern companies. One last build quality issue that seems to be universal on the Aoshima toys is the inability for the VTOL vent to drop down like it's supposed to. On a Toynami toy, the VTOL vent drops down and is actually free moving.
On the Aoshima toys, probably because of those ratcheting hips, it gets locked into position. So that's something that's sort of downgraded from the Masterpiece toys to the Aoshima toys. Now, I did say this Masterpiece toy has the ability to angle the legs outwards more than any of my other Masterpiece toys, which probably just means something's broken. And sure enough, if I rotate this leg out, you will see a crack in the plastic housing. So just wanted to point that out. That toy is indeed broken. That's why it gets more of a flare than most of my Masterpiece toys. But again, the Aoshima toys, you're going to get 0 flare outward. Now, I didn't discuss the knees when I was going through articulation, and they are a bit of a letdown here. So we can get that far backwards, and we can push the kneecap forward and get that far forward. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna get the toy with one leg forward at the hip, and then bend down at the knee, and then you'll probably bring the other leg back, and then you can flare it out, and that's how you're gonna get something that looks a little more dynamic as a stance, since the legs are otherwise so limited in what they can accomplish.
When this toy was announced, there was a lot of excitement around the prospect of a version 2 MPC Alpha. Aoshima had a pretty strong reputation for build quality, since the MPC is a pretty good-looking Alpha toy mired by build and durability issues. An Aoshima tweaked version could have been amazing. Unfortunately, that's not what happened. Aoshima did make some changes, but they left the manufacturer of the toys with Toynami. What we got was a toy that had some promising tweaks executed just as bad or worse than the Toynami MPC. In my experience, the Aoshima toys are less likely to completely fall apart on you, but it's also nearly impossible to find an Aoshima toy that looks well built. In the end, like the Toynami MPCs, only Mospeada completists should be tracking these toys down. Everyone else should be hoping a better Legioss toy will come along. Check out my full article on anymoon.com, subscribe, and thanks for watching.